This is ridiculous. I cannot imagine a human being eating that much in one sitting. In Strongman, the biggest thing that we are asked about is our food consumption. And today I'm going to talk about one of the greatest of all time, not just in terms of strongman, but in terms of strongmen who can eat. And I'm talking about the legend and the giant of Brian Shaw, 6'8", 450 plus pounds. He is not a normal man, and he certainly does not eat like a normal man. Today, I'm going to critique his strongman diet. Now, this is his old strongman diet. He updated this over time, but this is a true traditional old school strongman diet when they were just trying to get as large as possible to lift the biggest weights possible. So without further ado, let's get stuck straight in. Meal number one, he had 6 eggs, turkey sausage, 4 pancakes, 6 tablespoons of butter, maple syrup, and a 1/4 gallon of milk. When we talk about the breakdown for this is 3,747 calories, 116 grams of protein, 201 grams of carb, 138 grams of that is sugar, and 197 grams of fat. Now, these calories, 3,747, is insane. This is a bulking diet for most people, all in one meal. When we put food into our mouth, we have to appreciate this food is not yet in our body. It has to go from your stomach, a little bit of digestion there, into your small intestine. From there, we pull nutrients and it goes into our body. But a chunk of that food will pass through, it will be excreted, and you never actually see that food whatsoever. And so to be able to eat this amount of food in one sitting, you're going to need to upregulate all of the enzymes involved to get it from your intestine, your small intestine, into your bloodstream, from your bloodstream into either your muscle, your liver, your brain, wherever it may go. You can need those enzymes ready for this quantity of food. It's not something that someone could do just as a cheat meal and expect anything productive to come from it. Could Brian have upregulated enzymes enough to digest this quantity? Maybe, but I think it would be a stretch. I think this is probably stretching it a little bit too far for anyone because we do have the same digestive tract, even if it is a little bit larger in a larger person. So I think calorie content is probably too high in this first meal. Protein, 116 grams in one sitting. For an average person, this would be over the top, but for someone of Brian's size, this is not crazy to me. You need to get that protein in some way, in some meals, and the same logic applies for calories, but I think 116 grams of protein is more feasible to be eaten in one sitting and digested properly. When we get to carbohydrates, 201 grams of carbs, it's a lot. It's very heavy carbs. But my bigger problem is 138 grams of sugar. Where is this sugar coming from? Well, largely the milk and the butter in milk. Of course, this is lactose. Excuse me, not the butter, the milk and the maple syrup. In milk, it is lactose. In maple syrup, it is mostly sucrose with some glucose, a little bit of fructose in there. But the point here is we're not getting this from a fruit source. It's simply just cheap and easy calories to get in. 138 grams of sugar is not ideal. We also have 197 grams of fat. The average bodybuilder will have about 100 grams of fat a day in the off season. In one meal, this is very high. And where are we getting this from? Partially from butter. The fat in butter is not good for you. I know there is arguments about the other nutrients in butter. That's fine. That's an aside. Saturated fat is not a good thing to have in abundance. We also have the sausage that's going to give us a reasonable amount of saturated fat. And then we have eggs, which is unsaturated fat and fat that we do want to help us be healthy. That 197 grams is absolutely unequivocally too high in one meal. But that's how we get to 3,747 calories. It has to get in there somehow. I just question how much this is going to be productive and how much this is going to promote inflammation, limit recovery, of course, lead to poor body composition and being overly large. That's just meal number one. Just meal number one. When we go to meal number two, which he says is more of a snack, this is a pasta meal with pasta, bison, and red sauce. Calories are 1,770 with 111 grams of protein, 205 grams of carbs with 28 grams of sugar, and 51 grams of fat. Of everything, this is probably the most reasonable meal. I don't mind this at all. Pasta, bison, red sauce. The bison, I might switch out with a leaner source. I'm going to give you my full recommendations at the end, but really not bad all in all. 51.5 grams of fat is too high. We're getting that all from the bison. We do not want to be eating that amount, but sugar relatively low, protein in a reasonable range, carbs in a reasonable range for someone of his size. I give this meal a tick. We move to meal number 3, which is a chicken burrito, barbacoa tacos, and a large regular Coke. Regular Coke should be stricken from your diet. I don't care who you are, what you're doing. There's no purpose just to be ingesting huge quantities of pure sugar. If you want some sugar, you might as well get some electrolytes in or get some fruits and get some vitamins and minerals, something other than just pure sugar for the sake of it. When we talk about calories of this meal, we're talking 2,565 with 87 grams of protein, 273 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat. We also have 98 grams of sugar. This is not ideal. Sugar content, again, is too high. Our fat is going to be coming from the tacos and from the burrito, mostly from the cheese in this case. And cheese is not going to give us a good, rich source of good fats. I do want to talk about fat. Saturated fats are not good for you. I know there is debate about this on how indicative they are of something like cardiovascular disease, where there's a lot of recent research around the amount of blood sugar spikes you have, and that being more indicative of how much plaque you'll build up in heart disease. Regardless, saturated fat is not going to be good for you. So meal number 3, I want to take this down a little bit in terms of the sugar content and the fat content, and I'll tell you about that at the end. Meal number 4, a double bacon cheeseburger, large fries, and a chocolate milk. We're going off the end of the deep end here. We're just going full American, as I'm going to call it. Never go full American. Double cheeseburger, fries, chocolate milk. This is not something that an athlete should be eating. This is not something that's going to be productive for you in any sense of the word. This will increase your inflammation. It will make you more susceptible to injury. It will add fat to your body. There's nothing here that I can see is going to be useful for you. When we look at the calories, we got 1,940 calories, 71 grams of protein, 161 grams of carbs, with 62 grams of that being sugar, and 93 grams of fat. The macros of this aren't horrible. They're not horrible, but the quality of the food could not be worse. When you look at macronutrients, yes, there's an argument to say, well, macros is really what matters. That is the first foundation of what matters, but you do have to look at the quality of the food. Again, this is going to be indicative of inflammation, and your body will just not work as well on crappy food. If I had this same meal with the similar breakdown of macronutrients, we'd go something like ground beef, a beef broth, a yogurt and OJ, my favorite. You might go with something like some nuts on the side to get some of your healthy fats in. And the macros of the meal wouldn't need to change a lot, but the quality of the food will change substantially. And meal number 5, we're going to end on an absolute low. We're doing a large barbecue chicken pizza, cheesecake, and a large regular Coke. This is 4,270 calories, 139 grams of protein, 548 grams of carbs, 142 grams of that is sugar, and 240 grams of that is fat. Across the board, we are off the deep end. Calories are way too high. Protein is slightly high. Carbohydrates are way too high for one meal. Sugar is way too high for one meal. Fat is off of the charts, and we're getting that fat from the cheesecake and from the cheese on the pizza. And we're drinking Coke, which is pure just candy sugar. In terms of micronutrients, we're getting next to nothing. To sum up the whole day, there's no sniff at a vegetable or a fruit in this whole thing. In terms of good, whole, non-processed foods, there's very little going on. We've got eggs for breakfast. That's great. But really throughout, we're giving very little regard to overall health. And even if you're in a position where you say, I will disregard my overall health for physical performance, in order to physically perform well, your body needs to be functioning as well as possible. The total for this day is 484 grams of protein. The standard recommendation for an athlete whose resistance training is 1 gram per pound of body weight. For Brian, this is not crazy. This is the most reasonable number. We've got 1,054 grams of carbs. This is also not crazy. I have no problem with that. 450 grams of that is sugar, which is horrible. We've got half a kilo of sugar. To give context, Here is what half a kilo of sugar looks like. This is far too much for an individual to consume in one day, even if you are as large as Brian Shaw. And then we have 550 grams of fat, over a kilo of pure fat, which is largely saturated. The only inkling we have of good fats involved is eggs in the morning. Otherwise, it's a lot of saturated fat. Something like a bison is an acceptable form of fat. Yes, animal fat, I don't have a huge problem with, but we do have to incorporate some good fats into this as well. So let me make my changes. And my changes are not going to be for Brian because he had to eat a huge amount of calories. And I do appreciate you have to get them in some way. And you can't do it all with healthy foods or else you'd be so full so often. But I'm going to do a diet for a 5,500 calorie meal plan, something that I would eat in a day and that for any of you would be a reasonable bulking starting point. Meal number one, I'm happy to keep the 6 eggs. I would go half a cup of plain Greek yogurt and 1.5 cups of orange juice. I would also have some sort of pill to help with micronutrients. I've developed Strong Pills, which is a beef liver and heart, which is jammed full of micronutrients. That would be my first meal. My second meal would be pasta, just like him. Instead of bison, I would do chicken. I would add olive oil for healthy fats, and I would have red sauce. Meal number 3, I would have chicken, rice, beef broth, peppers, and spinach. This is what I have every day regardless, and this is Monster Mash, popularized and invented by Stan Efferding, which in terms of aesthetics and in terms of strength, Stan Efferding is the man. He is the man that I use, and he is a legend. Meal number 4, this is a post-workout, and meal number 4 for Brian was his double bacon cheeseburger and fries. I've just changed this entirely to a fruit smoothie with whey protein and milk. My idea when it comes to nutrition is that this should be as varied as possible. I don't have a set fruit list that I have, just whatever frozen fruit, chuck it in the blender, whey protein, milk, and you're good to go. And meal number 5, which was the barbecue chicken pizza and cheesecake, I've changed to steak, potato, broccoli, and then half a cup of plain Greek yogurt and 1.5 cups of OJ. If you haven't seen it yet, put the plain Greek yogurt in the orange juice, mix that around. It's like an orange slurry. It's my favorite food of the day, other than junk food, which I definitely dabble in as well, because we are human, and that is fine. But in this perfect meal plan, I have 5,500 calories, 410 grams of protein, which for me is a little bit high. I would like to shift that more to carbohydrates, but in the practical world, sometimes it's hard to get that many in. Potentially, I could decrease the serving size of some of my protein servings, and I could have a bag of mini rice cakes or something like that to make up for it. But nonetheless, an acceptable place to be. 650 grams of carbs with 267 grams of sugar, albeit this is mostly from the fruit smoothie, from the orange juice. And that's really it. And the red sauce. Those would be the major sources of sugar. The red sauce is not great sugar, but not the end of the world. Then we have 161 grams of fat, and this is from olive oil, steak, and eggs. This is a much, much healthier place to be, and your body will thank you for it. The one thing I would love to point out is that if you have a meal, that meal all goes into your stomach itself. And when it comes to carbohydrates and sugar, the sugar content is going to spike your blood sugar, of course, but if it's consumed with fat or with protein, the spike in blood sugar is going to be blunted. So if you're someone who likes to have sweets, you're going to be healthier to have those sweets with a meal so that your stomach is full. That all mixes together and you're not causing these blood sugar spikes that can have negative effects on your health. In and around training is a bit of a different story. Having a little bit of sugar can help with performance, but don't go overboard, especially if you're a strongman. We don't do that much movement overall. Most of these calories are going to sustaining our bodies, not to actually fueling our training. A standard strongman training session might actually only burn 500 calories because we don't do all that many reps. And 500 calories can be easily eaten with a half a slice of pizza. That's an exaggeration, but that's okay. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think that the old strongman diet should come back and we should just go to bloat lord status as much as possible? Or is the more athletic, reasonable, healthy form of strongman what you enjoy watching? I'm trying to make people healthier, happier, and more educated. That's the goal with the channel. If you're happy to support that, go ahead and subscribe. It's 100% free to you and helps us out massively. If you want help with your training, go ahead and check the link in the description. And if you want to inspire other people and join the movement of Lift Heavy, Be Kinds, the YouTube shop should be down below. If it's not, we have a link in the description and the pinned comment to get yourself some merch as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We will catch you tomorrow.